team. Our next speaker is here, which is exciting. Hi, Rebecca. We're glad you're here. We're finished with our review of our curriculum design and financial literacy design process and practices and principles. So I think we're going to do, if it's okay with everyone, is we'll just go into a 15-minute break. Grab a tea if you're so inclined. As you can tell, I keep saying the word tea because that is in fact what I'm going to do. I'm going to make myself a cup of tea. And I propose that
You want to walk on the wild side, Luke, and have some coffee?
Well, I can only say that in Silicon Valley, it's never a job, but it's always a wardrobe, and it's always stuff to have. So I do have coffee in here, but it needs a tea. So team, I will see you in about 8 or so minutes. And you're welcome to stay or welcome, but I'm going to take a break. So I'm going to turn recording off for a bit, and then you can chit chat.
Okay,
go ahead and get us started. And I would love everyone to say hello to Rebecca Gallagher. She is a really interesting person who is at the forefront of some very important educational and other trends in our world, notably law and financial literacy, and making sure that our students are getting the life skills that they need to operate. As my team knows, one of the standards that we use in guiding our financial literacy curriculum is the JumpStart Coalition standards, which are among the more widely accepted, if not the most widely accepted set of standards. And Rebecca was introduced to me by one of the directors at JumpStart as the California Coalition Director. And we're very thankful to have Rebecca here because she's also been instrumental in helping us create some opportunities for some interns, and we're very pleased with that. Rebecca, I would preview your talk, but for me, this is going to be a gift because it's going to be brand new, and I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. Welcome, and thank you so much.
I thank you for the opportunity. I truly thank you for the opportunity. I'll ask for forgiveness in advance of one little kind of glitchy thing that I'm going to have to do to get to a video clip, because the video clip that I have that I think is important for us to listen to is, well, anyway, I've got it on a separate tab, but nonetheless, let's get started. So thank you all for participating in this conference. I wish I could have seen more of it. I don't know, Luke, if I know you're recording it, so I'm going to look forward to looking at some of the sessions that I had to miss because of work. But anyway, here I am. Yes, thanks for the intro. I am the chair of the California JumpStart Coalition, which is the California component of a nationwide group of coalitions that was established some time ago, which I'll talk about in a minute. So where did my interest occur in financial literacy? I graduated from high school in 1971 and then completed college in the early 70s. And I thought it was kind of interesting that just to share that during my lifetime, because probably many, if not most, if not all of you are much younger than me, I think it's kind of interesting to see some of the economic downturns and some of what happened in my lifetime, and particularly in my formative years, completing college, building a first career in accounting, and then moving on actually in the 2000s into education. So a lot of stuff happened then, a lot of recession behavior, but then there's, of course, that steady, oops, I'm sorry about that. Go back here. Well, let's just move on. And then, of course, that continuing kind of departure in wealth, and we've all heard about that. So what I want to do is talk to you a little bit about the fact that the Financial Literacy Education Commission is in fact a commission of the US Department of the Treasury. It was established actually back in 2003. During the Obama administration, it had its first convening, and it was intended to shine a bright light on the need for financial literacy. Of course, you know that the Secretary of Treasury under the Biden administration is Secretary Janet Yellen. We all know Yellen, and interesting that I really didn't know this fun fact about her, but she's the first person in American history to have led the White House Council of Economic Advisors, the Federal Reserve, and the Treasury Department. So now this is where I'm going to have a little bit of awkwardness here as I go to another opportunity to share. And I've got it queued up, and I hope this works well. So this is at the first convening during the Biden administration, a little clip of Secretary Yellen's opening remarks of the FLEC, or Financial Literacy Education Commission. And let's hope this works. Here we go.
So I will turn it directly over to her. Madam Secretary.
Thank you so much, Louisa, and thanks to everyone for joining us. I'm pleased to chair this meeting of the Financial Literacy and Education Commission, and I'm very enthusiastic about the chosen topic, addressing some of the long-standing inequalities in our country. The fact that our economy has never worked fairly for people of color. I've been an economist for a long time. This is one of the areas where I focused my attention. And it was probably because I started studying economics during the civil rights movement. I took my first course back in 1963. I was a freshman in college. And if you looked at the economic data back then, the average Black family possessed roughly the wealth of the average white family. That's more than a 6-to-1 difference. It's stark, but perhaps it isn't surprising. Jim Crow laws were still in effect in many places. What's surprising, however, is that it's now more than half a century later, and that 6-to-1 number has barely budged. Today, African Americans remain unemployed at roughly twice the rate of white Americans. That number hasn't changed much in 50 years either. It's as close to a constant as you come in economic data. In fact, if you somehow transported my freshman economics professor to 2021, and you only showed him the employment and the wealth numbers,
unmute your speaker to increase the volume.
He'd have a hard time guessing that the country has passed the Civil Rights Act, or that we'd elected our first Black president, or our first Black vice president. Instead, he might actually notice signs that the country had headed in the opposite direction, especially after 2008. During the last recession, the highest white unemployment ever reached was 9.2%, but Black unemployment was trapped above 10% for 5 years. It reached 17%, and it hit its peak earlier and recovered slower than unemployment for almost any other group. This is what economic crises do. They hit people of color harder and longer. And we're seeing it happen again. During the early days of the pandemic, African Americans were the first to lose their small businesses and their jobs. And we've seen early data that suggests Black workers will be the last rehired when the economy opens back up. Of course, it would be very inaccurate to say that financial education alone can address the inequalities of the past 15 months or the past 50 years. It isn't a cure-all. There's a lot more we must do. Big fiscal policy is required to address the inequalities in this country and to build an economy that works for everyone. That's why the president signed the American Rescue Plan into law and has proposed the American Families and Jobs Plan to create a bigger, fairer, more competitive country. But research does show that education, and especially early education, about how to navigate personal finances can have a lasting positive impact on people's lives. It can be part of our strategy for building a more equitable economy. We know that young people who finish high school in states with robust financial education requirements tend to have better credit scores, fewer delinquencies, and they make more informed decisions about college financing. Similar research has found that young adults from states where financial education was mandated in high school were less likely to use payday loans, auto loans, pawn shop and rent-to-own financing compared to similar adults from other states. We have solid evidence about what makes financial education work. We know one-on-one financial coaching and counseling helps adults get out of debt, build savings, and successfully buy a home. We also know that education is much more effective when instructors take the time to understand people's individual hopes and dreams. Is someone trying to get out of debt or pay for college or buy a home or help extended family members? The best financial educators use not just knowledge, but also empathy to help people set and achieve their goals. And yet, where we can improve is making sure that everyone can access this type of education. We know that isn't the case right now. Compared to the national average, students in majority-minority schools receive financial education at half the national rate. If your child goes to an urban school rather than a rural one, she's half as likely to take a required financial education class. When we talk about financial inclusion, people tend to think about connecting people with bank accounts, for instance, and that is important. But many people also need more than the door to financial services. They need guidance in using them, help to overcome financial setbacks, tools to manage their daily needs, and support to take steps toward a brighter future. Any push for financial inclusion must include quality financial education too. And that's where I will end my remarks, except to say that, yes.
Okay, I'm going to stop the share right there because she goes on to another topic. I think you certainly heard her communicating the importance, hold on just a minute, the importance of financial education and the fact that it is broad and important. So let me go back to my PowerPoint. I'm not sure what this is asking me. Okay, all right, so thank you for putting up with my clumsy transition. Let's see here. Hold on a minute. I'm trying to get back to where I was. All right, there we go. From present slide. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So the coalition, as Luke alluded to, is headquartered. Well, it was established some decades ago, headquartered in Washington, D.C., and now, as of about 4 years ago, every state has an active coalition, some more active than others. But we are a network, we do share ideas, it's very collegial, and it's an important contribution to financial literacy in the United States. It was created in 1995, the National Coalition was, and of course, wanted to increase, personal finance education in schools because the importance was well known. The California Coalition has a very similar mission. Of course, our focus is California students and California schools. We are a nonprofit. We were formed in 1999. We have a 25-member all-volunteer board. We have several hundred members. Actually, I think we're now in the 300s of members, and a number of partners that we coordinate with to make sure to feature good quality personal finance education on the resource page of our website. These are just some of the partners that we have. We have had long affiliations with organizations like California, Cal CPA, with long associations with the FDIC, the SEC. Bita Reality is a very interesting program that brings a very innovative opportunity for students to have a live action personal finance experience. It's really a terrific program. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, so the Bay Area Financial Education Organization does a lot of outreach to schools. And you may have seen a presentation earlier by Andrea Ferraro and Dialect, who are with Pockets Change, and they're another one of our partners. Some of the initiatives, again, we're an all-volunteer group, so it really depends on board members being committed and engaged. And I think we are making great strides. That's always been the case. But as we rolled out one of our key initiatives, Financial Foundations for Educators, a couple of years ago, we really had to redouble our efforts to make that initiative happen with a volunteer board. But we're doing well with it. And I'm proud to be the current chair. And I'm overseeing a number of other initiatives besides Financial Foundations for Educators. We have a legislative committee because California is one of the few remaining states that does not require personal finance education. And I know you all have been talking about participatory budgeting. I think that the nice collaboration, coordination between FirstRoot and California JumpStart Coalition is that participatory budgeting as presented in the FirstRoot platform certainly supports getting the message out of the importance of personal finance education in its own unique way. But the legislative committee, we're working very hard to form a coalition of another sort in California to approach Sacramento and our legislature to begin to really take a deep look at the importance of personal finance education. We have a robust communications effort. Our newsletter goes out once a month. We're on every bit of social media, and we're very current. We're very current on information for our members that subscribe to our newsletter. So I would encourage you to do that. And then we have a number of ways that we directly connect with educators in the state of California. And can I add, just please stop me. I'm not paying attention to the chat stream. I'm not that, I like to think I can multitask, but I don't think I'm that good at it. So if you've got a question, please just chime in. You can feel free to stop me as I don't want to be the sage on the stage here. So please just let yourself be known. So we have a number of direct classroom outreach opportunities. Like I said, we have the monthly newsletter. We have an extraordinary teacher resource page on our website, as I've mentioned. We scholarship a number of teachers. In the past, it's been about a dozen a year to our Washington headquarters coalition, the National JumpStart Coalition. We scholarship a number of educators to go to their absolutely extraordinary annual teachers conference, National Educators Conference. It's called. Here you're seeing a little flyer for it. They really pull out all the stops for educators. I was lucky enough as an educator some time ago to be able to attend the conference, and it was just extraordinary. We also do a lot of outreach by way of, thanks to some grant funding, we are able to finance personal finance initiatives that teachers are bringing onto the Donors Choose platform. If you're not familiar with that, you should get familiar with that. If you want to support schools and teachers in what they do, it's a great way to do that. So we do that every month, actually. Back to the Financial Foundations for Educators program. So that was initiated in 2018 in our coalition. It started about a year before that in our national coalition. And we were fortunate enough to get grant funding to be able to roll out these workshops to teachers up and down the state of California. Each segment is taught by an expert. We are fortunate that on our board, we have a number of experts. They're all experts for the most part in finance, besides myself, teaching many of these segments. And we also bring in financial professionals from various organizations and career streams to also address some of these. This is actually, the photo you're seeing is of a live conference that we had before everything got shut down with COVID. So we actually have converted a 12-hour live, very interactive program to 8 hours virtually, which we're pretty proud of. We've rolled out 6 of them now since December of last year. And because that was our trial run on a virtual one. And then when everything shut down, let me let somebody in here. We've rolled it out pretty successfully, I would add. So economic outlook, we bring an economist in to talk about that. We have actually a retired economist on our board that has a great way of bringing really up-to-date information for teachers about the economic outlook. Again, spending and planning, credit, saving and investing, risk management. And we also partner with CalSTRS, which is our California State Teachers Retirement System, to do a piece on saving and retirement, which is very resonant with teachers. Hold on just a moment and let me go to the next slide. Not letting me do that. There we go. Another concern in California and in many states, but certainly in California, and this is also a concern of the teachers' retirement system, is recruitment and retention of teachers. So in our FFE program, our Financial Foundations for Educators program, we are careful to acknowledge that this is important information for teachers to have for their own benefit, to understand savings and investing, to understand credit and debt, to ask good questions of CalSTRS. It's really a kind of an out of the box. You'll see here, I've got a little yellow line there. It's an out of the box sort of professional development that we can bring to teachers. And not only teachers that are currently employed as teachers, but we have had very robust outreach with our California State University teacher training programs. That's a personal favorite of mine, to oversee and manage the FFEs for those groups, because it's important for them to understand that teaching is not only a noble profession, it's a difficult profession, but we are here to give them good information and to connect them to good resources for their own benefit and for the benefit of them being an advocate for personal finance education in California. And again, please stop me, anybody with a comment or a question. I'm not really manning the chat as I'm moving through here, and I apologize for that. I'll try to get to that in a bit. So student loan debt has certainly come up, particularly with the FFEs that we've been doing at some of our state colleges and the teacher training programs there. This is just a little snapshot of some teachers not quite minted at California State University Stanislaus recently, and many of them were very concerned about their student loan debt. So we like to try and incorporate that as a conversation, an overriding conversation when we're addressing the undergraduate and credential, people in credential training programs. We like to really focus on managing their debt and saving and investing relative to the fact that many of them, in fact, in many cases, most of them have student loan debt that they're carrying into their professional lives. I'm going to stop right here and just see if somebody's does anybody have a comment or a question at this point? I'd certainly appreciate it. Or I'll just keep going on. I wanted it to be kind of fluid and not like, Q&A at the end, but that's fine. We'll do some Q&A.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I do have some, this is Clint. I have some questions just with respect to how you see, we've talked about the fact that California doesn't have a state standard associated with financial literacy.
Yes.
And in the beginning video, we, it was touched on the fact that actually, based on whether or not you're in a rural school versus, metropolitan school, you were less likely to receive a mandatory financial literacy class, if you will. Do you have statistics, or do you have a sense of the percentage of schools in California that currently do mandate have a financial literacy mandate associated with their graduation track, let's say?
The graduation track, that's pretty rare. A few years ago, we tried the best we could. Again, we're an all volunteer board, so we don't have like a research group or anything like that. But we did parse out some data that it appeared that out of the thousands of schools in California, that there were about 600 that were offering it in some form, and that was a broad range. And high schools, of course, as you probably know, Clint, are you in California?
Spent a long time in California.
Okay.
Currently in India.
Oh, okay. Currently in India. Well, so California, again, as I said, doesn't have it as a requirement. And also, California has a rich tradition and adherence to school district autonomy. And as many efforts as there have been over even just recent years to introduce legislation to require personal finance education in California, it never makes it out of committee, or at least it hasn't. And a lot of that is because, and we had a meeting actually in Sacramento a couple of years ago to try and understand this a little bit better. And actually, there were two aspects to it. According to the legislative assistants that we had the lead legislative assistant for the California State Senate and for the California State Assembly, and they both agreed that there were two obstacles to passing personal finance education. Number one was actually California's legislature being very beholden to what's called the A to G requirements, which means that particularly at the high school level, what they want to see is college preparatory. Every student, the ideal is every student gets to a college preparatory curriculum. And generally speaking, this is kind of anecdotal, but there is the impression that anything that is personal finance education harkens back to an earlier period in California where that was like the watered down math that you could take to graduate. So the state.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yes, there is something of a stigma there. And in addition to that, there is the autonomy of school districts, particularly large school districts that are busy managing what's happening in their districts and really are not quick to want to sign up for something being pushed down from
Sure.
Sacramento. Okay.
It's
Now,
hard enough to do what we're doing. We don't
Right.
necessarily need to volunteer to do more.
right.
Fair?
But the good news is there are a lot of schools in the state. In fact, there's one large school system, a school district, I should say, in Lodi, California, that they have made that part of their graduation requirement. They really worked very hard to make that happen. And Lodi is not one of the largest ones. Certainly LA County Unified and San Francisco is among the largest. But there's some progress on that front. And like I was alluding to, our legislative committee is, there are many organizations, California Association of Certified Public Accountants, the Financial Planners of California, many of the big financial institutions. We all know the importance of personal finance education. We know this. And so our legislative committee is working to slowly try to form a new collaboration among like-minded organizations like ourselves to try and approach California state legislators in a different way, in a way that's actually modeled on Washington State has a model that we are looking very closely at, that they instituted with no actual requirement for personal finance education legislated. It was very weak, but since 2008, they have had a fairly robust public-private partnership, which Washington State funds and also contributors fund, that keeps financial education spreading out through Washington State. And they've been able to maintain that for almost 2 decades. So we're looking at that as a model on how the whys and the hows of that coalition working so well for so long, and how that can be a model for us.
That kind of leads into, and maybe the Lodi, is the answer to this next question. But I was curious. At FirstRoot, we talk about anytime we have a concept that we know we're looking to say we're integrating a feature, we're integrating, let's say, commenting into into our system. Well, we say, well, what does good look like? And actually, Luke has a colleague and that he works with who uses this phrase a lot. Luke, you'd have to remind me of his name. But we ask, what does good look like? Let's go out. Let's go see who's doing it best, right? Gary Duncan is his name, just to give credit where credit is due. But so if you were to say, well, here's a school that's truly doing it best, or a district, or where would you see a model where you're saying, you know what, if you're going to do financial literacy, I would say it's really happening, it's most effective here, and this is what it looks like. Have you?
I think that a relative newcomer to the personal finance education space, I think it's been about 5 years, is Next Gen Personal Finance. Many of you have probably heard of them. Maybe you're very familiar with them. Because they have an enormous resource base, financial resource base. It's really the brainchild of Silicon Valley entrepreneur, and he's using an enormous amount of his personal wealth to create very refined personal finance education curriculum and access to all sorts of resources. So in answer to your question, I think that as far as a model goes, Lodi is probably not the perfect model, because they, the demographics of Lodi, let's just keep on the demographics of Lodi, is different than the demographics of San Francisco Unified or of Palo Alto Unified or whatever. So they may not be the perfect model. But NextGen in their outreach has identified some school districts, many of them interestingly in outlying areas of California, like out in Bakersfield and Antelope Valley, and where they are creating and initiating robust personal finance programs using the NextGen curriculum. So they may end up being sort of a model. Of course, my own personal bias is I wouldn't want any one curriculum to be crowding out the many, many good options that are out there for personal finance education. NextGen, nobody gets to own the space, so to speak. And as a coalition, a nonprofit coalition, we're welcome to bring anybody with personal finance education into our coalition as a partner, but we're not going to, represent or promote one over another, per se, if you follow that. So getting back to that legislative push and the opportunity in this moment, probably for participatory budgeting. Luke and I have talked about this. As we all know, the last school year has been very trying, and it's been particularly trying for students. And some of the statistics raise the hair on the back of your neck to read at the erosion of progress that's happened for many, many students. So it's really, I think it's a moment where when the new school year opens in just only a number of weeks, really, in many areas, student engagement is more important than ever. And interestingly, personal finance education represents an opportunity to address one of the key things that's happening in California schools, at least in a philosophical way, and that is to make sure to address social, emotional supports for students. And financial literacy, in my opinion, and in their opinions too, the conference that actually presents this every year to schools up and down the state, they recognize that personal finance education brings in self-awareness and self-management and responsible decision-making in a very big way. So, it takes up 3/5 of, that social emotional learning component. So I think we're in a moment of student engagement and financial literacy, providing the opportunity to address this social emotional learning component.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. You're welcome. So I think we got kind of a small group here, but hearkening back to Secretary Yellen's remarks, she used the term financial inclusion, but she also used the word empathy. And there is a gentleman who is a founder of an organization called Operation Hope. Some of you may be familiar with him, but he is a very, very eloquent spokesman for the disadvantaged folks in our country, whatever ethnic variety they may be. And in fact, he is, if you'd like me to share the link to what is after Janet Yellen's remarks, I'd be happy to do that. You could just send something in the chat stream. I can post it in the chat stream for anybody that's interested in listening to the whole Financial Literacy Education Commission report. And you will see,
That would be great.
you will see John Hope Bryant in that, among the many other people that are chiming in that are members of the commission. But I'm just going to read this out loud because I think this is just, it really speaks to what, at least the spirit, some of the spirit of what Secretary Yellen was saying. And that is, you know, him defining the difference between being broke and poor. Okay. And he and Operation Hope's message for decades now has been very much concentrated in inner city communities, but my guess is they've had some amazing, and actually I should be sharing whatever amazing success stories they could share, but for more information on them, please visit their website, and I'm sure you can find out all that information. And like I said, I will put that link in the chat stream as soon as I'm done here. So again, I'm chair of the California JumpStart Coalition. We have a wonderful website, thanks to Andrea Ferraro and the many members of our communications committee. We've got a 21st century website now with lots of teacher resources and etc. So that is all with my comments at this point. I'm happy to, in fact, let me grab that. I'm going to grab that. Let me escape out of here. Again, I'm doing okay with all this stuff for my age. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
You're doing great.
You're doing great. You're doing great for any age.
Okay, well, it can be a little.
We spent. Oh my gosh! Look at my hair.
Okay.
Anyways, we spent.
And by the way,
we spent 45 minutes getting fifth graders signed into an application.
Oh wow! Okay.
Right, 60 fifth graders signed in with passwords. You're doing amazingly.
Well, I mean, you know, and can I just mention during this clip, and I don't think I'm sharing the screen right now, but during the clip with Secretary Yellen, did you notice the gaffes, the technological gaffes? Yeah. That was a Department of the Treasury.
Yeah, yeah, certainly.
I was just aghast at that. When I was
right in the middle of like important statistics, just some man walks past this.
Yeah, and then just these interruptions, and they have that awful thing going behind her head. Anyway, that's just a little side commentary. But let me put in the chat stream the link. It's a long one, but I couldn't find it. It's not in YouTube. It's not in YouTube. It's not on Vimeo. It's only through the Treasury's Yorkcast. It's called. So that's the link, and it's a 2-hour presentation. So if you're up for it, but she's just the lead in. But John Hope Bryant, if you scan through it and find him, he is worth listening to, as the other gentlemen and ladies were as well. But he's very impressive. So open for any questions or comments, or it's my pleasure to be part of this. And yeah, I think that that participatory budgeting is also having a moment. I think that engaging students, engaging teachers, helping them to engage students. They're going to need all the help they can get in many, many schools around this state and around the country.
Certainly.
Where do you see the I guess I have a couple of questions. Mm-hmm. What could we do, or what should we be doing to help promote the inclusion of financial literacy standards like they have in Wisconsin or Texas or some other states here in California? And that's a very that's a very narrow question, because our dev team and our ambitions are global, right? We're planning pilots in India. We've got developers and members of our team across the country, in London, in Mexico, in India. But being very central to where I live, what could we do to promote, or what should we be advocating for?
Well, there's a number of things. I mean, there's always, of course, the base level, which is, school boards and addressing a local school board, your kid's school board, the unified school district that you happen to reside in. And, just showing up or letting them know, communicating with them, ideally in a group of like-minded people, the importance of personal finance education. And and there's lots of ways you can slice and dice it. I mean, a lot of people see it as an equity issue. Okay, like I said, in the social emotional learning, it's definitely part of that component that school systems and school districts are very much addressing. So there's that. There's, reaching out to your schools and organizations that maybe are supportive of schools. I know in Healdsburg, there is a parents group. It's not the PTA. It's actually a foundation that slowly developed over time to make sure that there was enough support for addressing our school district about issues of importance. And then I'll just say that, the power in numbers are the JumpStart Coalition's legislative committee is interested in finding like-minded folks to become interested and particularly participate in this legislative effort that we're trying to create. Again, the model is Washington State, and if you look up the financial literacy public-private partnership in the state of Washington, you can see the composition of that partnership. It was very innovative legislation, as I mentioned earlier, that I think allowed it to be sustained over all these years. And what's interesting is if you look at the people that participate, that rotate into positions in this partnership, it's very robust and very diverse. And there are individual teachers. There are, individual business owners. There are big financial institutions. There are community-based organizations. So there's a lot of ways that we're looking at who we can bring under the tent, so to speak, to begin to craft a strategy to approach our California state legislature. It's a big task. We're just beginning to get our hands around it. I mean, we've tried in the past. And in fact, one of our board members was very instrumental in when they rewrote the framework, the social science framework. It was newly adopted back in 2018. There was input from our board that actually influenced particularly the economics framework to articulate personal finance concepts to help describe and teach economic concepts. So it's in the framework. You can see personal literacy thanks to some members of our board. You can see personal finance as a kind of a color in the palette of the economics curriculum now.
Okay, and then my second question is, as we've been developing our curriculum, we finally have, I think, a lens that is authentic to us, a path that's authentic to us. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about, for example, in the planning phase of our participatory budgeting program, we're talking about making sure you have the right people involved, making sure you have the right theme, making sure you understand, the budget. And we've mapped certain JumpStart standards into an equivalent, like, how do you start? Well, you learn how to talk about finance. You have the basics of savings and checking accounts. You understand how to manage your personal identity and your personal information. So what we did was in the designing of our curriculum, we kind of looked at the JumpStart Coalition standards, and we kind of pulled a thread through those standards in a way that was authentic to us.
Mhm.
And again, another example would be in participatory budgeting. After planning, we have ideation. Ideation is the opportunity for thinking expansively and talking about like where you might go. So we talk about the same kind of expansive ideas of, setting financial goals and understanding what your financial plan is.
Mhm.
So my question to you is, what do you think is the most underserved, or the part of every curriculum that you might look at from a vendor where you kind of sigh and feel a little sad because it was just like the one thing that they missed that they should have, because there's no way, as near as we can tell, to cover the entire JumpStart Coalition standard in a curriculum in the time frame that most schools would allot. So we have to make some choices about that. But if there was one thing that you would be like, wow, it's really critical to include this, what would be that truly critical thing that we just have to make sure that we handle?
Well, I think that, and Luke, you and I have talked about this, I think, in one of our conversations, I think there was a thread around how critical it is to make sure that participatory budgeting doesn't just happen in the AP government class.
Okay.
That it's broader and more inclusive. Let me use an example. Probably one of the most widely used curriculums in personal finance curriculums that was used in the country for some years. It's actually winding down right now because they've gone on to just being a research institute. They're called the National Endowment for Financial Education.
Yeah,
anyway,
I noticed that. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
fully aware of that being
They're
wound down.
winding-
And
Right. Well, I taught that curriculum. I used that curriculum as sort of a base when I was teaching economics. But what was interesting, because my choice as a second career teacher, coming into teaching as a second career, I wanted to work with underserved students. So I was working in continuation programs and, pretty much marginalized kids. And what I noticed, as much as I liked that curriculum and I had used it with my college prep students, I realized that it wasn't very resonant with other kids. Like one of the planning pieces was to plan for the prom, right? And save for the prom, because save your allowance. Well, when you're addressing a group of kids that A, don't get an allowance, and B, might be in a program where there is no prom, or they can't afford to go to prom, or something like that, it becomes sort of a broader issue. So that, I guess, to not get too off the reservation with this, I think that's, to me, so many initiatives require an advocate on that particular campus. I was the advocate for personal finance education because I knew the importance of it. I'd already had a first career in business. I was already a grown-up. I was in my 40s entering education as a new teacher. And I thought, wait a minute, we're not teaching personal finance? This is crazy. So I was that advocate. And
so the advice isn't curriculum. The advice is, the one thing that you need to make sure you do is have the campus advocate.
It starts with a campus advocate. Ideally, that would be an administrator. Ideally, that would be the principal. Ideally, that would be the whole school board for that particular district, really signing on to the importance of it. As an anecdote, we have worked many times, our coalition, we have spent time working the California School Boards Association conference. Luke, I think maybe you and I have talked about this. And without fail, we would be in the exhibit hall with people like selling insurance to, board members and all that sort of thing. So it's a whole, hundreds and hundreds of California school board members from all over the state, up and down the state. And interestingly, to a person, if we could have them come over to our little table to talk about personal finance, almost to a person, they would say, my gosh, we're not doing this in our school. Why aren't we? You know, if there was 2 or 3 of them, yeah, we're not doing this, are we? Why not? That seems so obvious. Why are we not doing that? And remember, school board members, they hire administrators. They hire the superintendent. They hire the superintendent, you know, and so on. So there's influence there, but having an advocate, you know, this advocate on the school board, an advocate as an administrator, an advocate at a school site, one teacher, that'll help go. But that's, I would just, yeah, caution it being something that would be, you know, great for an honors, you know, the honors courses. You know, make sure to have participatory budgeting and for personal finance education go all over the place. And there's my colleague, Andrea, and she could probably very intelligently, more intelligently articulate a little additional commentary on that.
Oh, thanks. I've loved this too, Rebecca, being able to sit in and just listen. I'm like, wow, we are doing a lot of things as a board. One of the things that I think when it comes to curriculum, Luke, if you check out our California JumpStart website, we did this teacher resource project, and we had an elementary school teacher, a middle school, and a high school teacher help us curate resources from across the wide array of partners we work with. And one of the areas that kind of hurts me a little bit, my like inner like librarian kind of side of me. If you search for the standard SS2, which is develop a system for keeping and using financial records, you don't get anything right now. And that's because oftentimes that relates to, we think of it like budgeting being the first step, but there's not a lot of curriculum out there about the transferable skill of understanding your financial life, the holistic view, right? And the habit building around it.
Like, oh my God, I seriously, if we were physically present, and my team knows this is true, I would stand up and walk over and hug you, because Scott will tell you in the development of our curriculum, there was a couple of I'm a dad moment of 4 kids, and I got 2 in college and 2 in high school. And I have to share this, because when you said the keeping of financial records, guess what is part of our first part of our curriculum? Keeping financial records, the 4th lesson. And my personal story was the joy of helping one of my sons who received his W-2, didn't know what it meant and threw it out. And then on April 10th saying, hey, by the way, y'all filed your taxes, right? Oh, okay, Dad. Oh, Dad, they want this thing called a W-2. What's that? So as part of, the notion of, like looking at the PB cycle, right? Planning and P is making sure you're prepared. In our curriculum, it's making sure that your students are prepared for what's coming. And so it's about, talking money, baking basics, even if they, and then right there. So, we are so with you, keeping financial records, the 4th lesson, because in our modern society, and in all sincerity, in our modern society, it's overwhelmingly complex. And if we don't know how to keep those records, we're pretty much at a loss.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay.
Andrea is a gift from the universe to our board. I just have to say that.
All right. Okay, I think we have to move to our next speaker, although
sure.
There's always, each speaker has been so amazing. I just want to say thank you so much. And we look forward to a long and brilliant relationship. And we'll be tracking down the school board conferences. We'll get a handle on those.
Yes, touch base with me anytime you want on that.
Oh, we will.
Okay.
All right.